All right, we're here. Oh, God.
Oh, what a life it's been.
The future is bright.
I can't wait for this to get delayed.
Future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. Let's go.
So, is it going to get announced to be coming out next year?
I don't know. We'll find out.
I could see them pushing it back. I mean, they were already struggling to get parts as it was.
Hi. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the talk that we had planned for GDC. But we do have some super exciting news.
This could have been green screened for a little while. I would have believed
better
it.
to bring that to
This
you.
doesn't look like a real
One and
audience.
only Mox
It
Cine.
does not.
Without further ado,
It looks like the audience you see in the like, let's all go to the lobby.
Oh no, it looks like the Devolver
Lots
Digital.
of chances later
Oh,
on this
yeah,
year
yeah.
to look at the PlayStation 5 games. Today, I want to talk a bit about our goals for the PlayStation 5 hardware and how they influenced the development of the console. I think
like
you all
Dana
know I'm a
Carvey.
big believer in
Kinda
console
does,
generations.
shit.
Once every
Yeah,
5
look
or
at that
6 or
thick
7
boy right
years,
there.
a console arrives with substantially
one?
new capabilities.
The PS3.
A lot of learning by the game developers, hopefully not too overwhelming.
boy.
And soon there's games that could never have been created
They're
before.
all big boys.
Now, it used to be
I like
that
how
as a
Mark Turner
console
doesn't even work for
designer,
fucking
you'd somehow
PlayStation.
intuit
Yeah.
what would be the best set
Get
of
your neck
capabilities
ass
for
outta
the new
here.
console, and then build it in
yelled Big
complete
Mac.
secrecy. For the PlayStation consoles, that period lasted through PlayStation 3, a powerful and groundbreaking console, but also one that caused quite a lot of heartache, as it was initially
Yeah,
difficult
thanks,
to develop
everyone.
games for. So, starting
Thank
with
you for coming
PlayStation
to my
4,
TED
we're
Talk.
taking a different approach, roughly centered around 3 principles. The first of these is listening to the developers, which is to say that a
Got a
lot
very
of what
soothing
we
voice
put
for this.
into a console
Yes.
derives directly from the needs and aspirations of the game creators. We definitely do have some ideas of our own, but at the core of our philosophy
don't think
for
this is
designing
real.
consoles
I
is that
don't
game
think it is
creators are
either.
here for the fantastic games, which is to
Well, let's
say
stick around
that
that
game
snack
creators
theory.
matter. Anything we can do to make life
Then it makes
easier for the
total
game
sense.
creators,
Dude,
or
these
help
people
them
don't- they don't
realize their
move.
dreams.
I know, they
that,
don't.
that one guy on the
There
left.
was like a
It's about
movement to
once
the
every
left,
2
but
years.
Yeah, the one on the
Tour
left
the
does, though. I'm looking at the
industry.
woman
I
on
go
the
to the
right.
various
Just
developers
It was like a
and
little
publishers,
wiggly, too.
sit
It was
down
weird.
and discuss how they're doing with the current
But still, they
consoles
just
and what they'd like
rate-
to see in future.
Three
I want them to
doesn't-
do some
This
weird like
requires
Twitch thing, you
weeks
know,
on
when,
the
like
road
in
as
horror
regional
movies when they do
bulk
that,
of game
like
creators
that blur
involved
effect
talking to
whenever their
well
head,
over
heads are
100
freaking
people,
out.
something like
Oh, yeah,
2 dozen
like
publishers
some
and
Silent Hill
developers.
shit.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly valuable. By the way, the feature most requested by
Oh,
the
that'd be
developers,
cool. They're
that
not seeing
was an
Silent Hill
SSD,
after they bought
which
them.
we were very happy to put in the hardware, but a lot of problem solving was required. I'll be doing a deep dive on the SSD and surrounding systems
Jesus
later
Christ,
on.
this guy's gonna put me to sleep.
It's also key to make a generational leap while keeping the console sufficiently familiar to game developers. I think about this in terms of balancing evolution and revolution.
They're all like
Now,
the same
with
head
PlayStation
shape,
1,
too, on
2,
the
and
left.
3, the target was a revolution each time.
These
with
aren't
a
real
brand
people.
new feature set.
Calling it
That was
right
great
now,
in
that
many
one
ways,
in
but
the
time for the
far
developers to
right
get up and running
group,
got longer.
that's Peter
Oh, is the
Molyneux.
Hot Ones
In the
guy?
past, I've called
No,
this
that one's Peter Molyneux.
Oh, okay.
Here's what I had for those
Fable
3
Full.
consoles.
Or 5.
To be clear,
whichever.
I'm not talking about time
I
to make a
can't
game.
remember what the
Developers
last one
will be
was.
ambitious, and it may take them 6 years or so to realize their vision. What I'm talking about is that dead time before graphics and other aspects of game development are up and running, and trying to minimize that. On the other hand, if we're trying to reduce that dead time to 0, that means the hardware architecture can't change at all. We're handcuffed. We need to judge for each feature what value it adds and whether it's worth the increase in developer time needed to support it.
Oh, Adrian.
So with PlayStation 4, we were able to strike a pretty good balance between
You there?
performance and familiarity.
Yeah,
without
I went to grab
required
food really
learning
quick.
back to PlayStation 1.
they just
With PS5,
they're showing off
the
a new
GPU
hero
was
for
definitely
Overwatch.
the area we felt the
Oh
most potential,
shit!
adding new features and keeping a familiar programming model.
Well, not new. but
Ultimately,
it's-
I think we've ended up with something under
here?
a month of getting up to speed.
yeah, on here.
That feels like
Right in the place-
Yeah, while you
I'll
left,
go
Mark
into a bit
Cerny
more
was like,
detail later today.
here's
It's Mark
Solner.
30 for the
Or-
PlayStation team.
feature set
here's
that-
Winston 2.
It's also very important for us,
New
as the hardware
dreams.
team, to
Dreams?
find
Game?
new
Dreams?
dreams.
Dreams
that
2
are
already?
New Little
other
Big
than
Planet?
CPU
How much would this get
performance,
disliked,
GPU
Gore, if you just stop this right now to go
performance,
look at that new
RAM.
hero?
The increasing graphics performance over the past
Just put it in
decades has been
another screen off to
astonishing,
the
but there
side.
are other areas in which we can innovate
Whoa.
and provide significant value to the game creators, and through them, the players. That's why
Everyone's
the
all like,
SSD
everyone's
was
spamming in
very
chat. They're
much
bored.
on
I'm like,
the
well,
list
this is
of
what you.
directions to
This is
explore,
what. This is why
regardless of what came out of the
it was
conversation
being approached the way it was for a while.
publishers.
Yeah, that's why I
The
got that's the
PS4,
day
the
before.
PS4 unveiling
Is
wasn't
the
fucking
custom
exciting
engine
either.
For
No,
audio.
it wasn't.
That's today's final topic. The push for vastly improved audio, and in
Neither
particular,
PS4 or
3D
Xbox
audio,
One was
isn't
fucking
something
exciting.
that came out of the developer meetings. It's
Nintendo's
much more the
wasn't
case that we
exciting
had a
either.
dream of what might
Remember
be
that shit?
possible.
This
5
is
years ago.
GDC shit. That's
And
why.
we worked out a number of steps we could take to set us on
Maybe
that.
Developers are
watching
fucking
this.
popping off right
So
now.
here again are the three principles. The
600,000
first being
people watching this
enabling the
on YouTube.
desires.
Yeah,
of
well,
developers
good timing,
to
'cause everyone's
drive
fucking
the
inside.
hardware design. To me,
Well, I
the
gotta do it 9
SSD
o'clock in the
really
morning,
is the
nothing.
key
All right,
to the
fuck
next
it.
generation.
Nobody was watching
It's
Indie
a
World
game
yesterday.
changer. And it was the number
Yeah, those are
one ask
indies.
from developers.
No one
for
cares
PlayStation
about
5.
those.
Yeah, this is
As in,
SSD.
we know it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, yeah. The logo looks like
An
something
SSD.
fucking Photoshop would
That
have
was
or
a
Adobe
discussion
would
we were
have.
also having internally.
Open it
Adobe
up.
It was clear that
SSD.
the presence of
Yeah,
a hard
it
drive
doesn't
in
look
every
like one of
PlayStation
those
4
fucking
was
icons.
having a positive
Shout out
impact.
my
Yeah.
fucking.
A lot of things
I-
that
I don't
were
like
impossible
this
at
presentation
Blu-ray
layout.
disc speeds were now possible.
What XO?
It looks,
oh,
it looks so
square.
cheap.
Square.
No, I know, just him standing up
When
there
we were
like
having
that,
these
like
conversations,
What, in
developers
front of
were
his
already
Vio?
banging up against the limit.
front of the
Which is a
Sony
Sony
Bio. Yeah,
product?
A lot of developer time was being
Please
spent
buy the
designing
Vio.
around
Nobody
slow
likes it.
I forgot that was a
Actually,
thing.
Nah, I'm sure people like.
I want to focus in on just one number here, which is how long it takes to load a gigabyte of data from a
All right,
hard
here
drive.
we go.
The difficulty being that hard drives are neither particularly
I thought he was gonna
fast
show something.
nor flexible.
That's,
Fast and flexible.
All
That's
your
four
data
right
is
there.
in one block, which is frankly not very likely. You can load
Whoa,
50 to
2
100
to
megabytes
50
a second,
millisecond? I'm gonna
depending on
count
where
it.
the data is located.
All right,
on the
count it
hard
right
drive.
now.
Let's assume
Okay.
it's on the outer edge, which means loading a
All right, I already
gigabyte
did.
takes 10 seconds. If you compress your
Wanna see me do it again?
you can fit
you
more
do it
data on the
again?
Blu-ray disc and also effectively boost your hard drive read speed by the compression ratio. We support zlib decompression on PlayStation 4 that gets you something like 50% more data on the disc and 50%
Where's the
higher
Entitled
effective
Goose?
read speed.
Maybe that's the first game
though,
they show on
it's
PS5.
highly likely that your data
Entitled
is
Goose game
scattered
too?
around
Oh,
in various
dude.
No, it's the
I'm
same
in.
game except with
as
better
well
fur
as
now.
sourced from multiple locations within those files. So lots of
It's hyper-realistic.
at 2 to
Yeah.
50-ish milliseconds.
It's a Mega
each.
64 video.
My rule of thumb is that the hard drive is spending 2/3 of its time seeking and only 1/3 of its time actually loading data. Putting all of that together, a gigabyte is very roughly 20 seconds to load from a hard drive. Now, a gigabyte is not much data. Games are using 5 or 6 gigabytes of RAM on PlayStation 4, so boot times and load times can get pretty grim. Or to put that differently, as a player, you wait for the game to boot, wait for the game to load,
And
wait for
wait
the
for the
levels
excitement
to
in this
reload
video.
every time you die, and you wait for what is
Wait
euphemistically
for
called
disease.
I knew this wasn't going to be fucking hell
all of
exciting. I'm
that
so
leads
curious
to
though.
the dream. What if we could have not just an SSD, but a blindingly fast SSD? If we
Target.
could load
Is it Target
5
exclusive?
gigabytes a second from it, what would change?
Can you imagine?
Completely
Only
different
Target.
hard drives. They
Only
don't have
Target has
sinks as such.
PS5.
If you have a 5 gigabyte a second SSD, you can read data from 1,000 different
I like
locations.
they
in
always
that
show
second,
how shitty
pretty
the
much
last
at
console
speed.
was.
As
Yeah, it's
for
like, hey, that
time
trash
to
you have
load
right
per
now
gigabyte, this is
sucks.
next
Fucking
gen we're
takes
talking
up to
about.
50
So memory is
milliseconds.
bigger. Instead,
keep
we should
buying
be
it for next
asking
year,
how
please, oh
long to
God.
load 2 gigabytes. And the answer is about
hurting.
a quarter of a second.
Yeah, they
That's
gotta be using
amazing.
M2
We're talking
drives for
2
these.
orders of magnitude.
Wow, look
Saved,
at that.
saved in K2,
Roughly
5 years to
100
load.
times
Look at this. I feel like I'm
which
in
means
math
at 5
class.
gigabytes a second
Fuck.
for the SSD, the potential is
2
that the
GB
game
plus
boots
fucking
in a
5
second.
GB.
There are no load screens. The game just fades down while loading.
A man
This is
carries
a-
2
that's not a load
GB into
screen.
the store. He has
Same
5
for a
GBs
reload,
when he
you're
leaves. Now
immediately back in the action. after a while. And fast travel
Cindy.
becomes so fast it's
Good,
blink
good.
and you miss it.
It's the
As
train
game
station at
creators, we go
5
from trying to
GB.
distract the player from how long fast
The
travel
train is
taking,
2 GB
like those
late.
Spider-Man
Fuck.
subway
I don't want
rides,
this.
to being so blindingly fast that we might even
Is
have
this
Cindy
the
gets
load
on
screen
a
or is
train
this the
at
game?
2 GB. Another train's about to
Pretty
head
cool,
on collider
but
at
for
1
me,
GB.
this
When do
is
they
not
collide
the
and die?
primary reason
don't
to
know,
change
Knack.
from a hard drive to an SSD.
You're right.
The primary reason for an ultra-fast
You're right.
is that it gives the game designer freedom. Or to put that differently, with a hard drive, the 20 seconds that it takes to load a gigabyte can sabotage the game that the developer is trying
Sabotage.
to create. I think
Bollocks,
almost
a
all of us in the room
sabotage.
have experienced this, maybe
Guy's
in
getting a
different
little
ways.
extreme with his
Say we're
metaphors
making an
here.
adventure game, and we have 2 rich environments where we each
Well, I
want
think he
enough
just says something
textures
really
and
racist
models to
randomly.
fill memory. Which you
Only
can do
1
as long
GB?
as you have
It'll
a long
fucking
staircase,
kill you, I
elevator
swear to
ride,
God.
or a
I will
wind a
will
corridor
fucking
where you can ditch
come
the
out
old
of the
assets,
screen and
then
strangle
take
you to
30
death.
seconds or so to load the new
Leave a
asset.
fresh corpse.
Having a 30-second elevator ride is a little extreme.
Oh,
More
murder your
realistically,
dog.
we'd probably chop
No,
the
not my
world
doggy.
into a number of smaller pieces and then do some calculations with sight lines and run speeds like we did for
Jack
Haven City
2,
when we were
baby,
making
let's go.
Jack 2.
Jack
The
2,
game is
Haven
20
City,
years
Hey,
old.
baby.
Jack
Not
2,
much has
Knack
changed
2?
since then.
Oh,
All
fuck.
those twisty passages are there for a reason.
Sack
There's a whole
2,
subset
Sack
of
Boy,
level design
Little Big Planet
dedicated
4.
to this sort of work, but still, it's a giant distraction for a team that just wants to make their game. So when I talked about the dream of an SSD, part of the reason for that 5 gigabyte a second target was to eliminate loads, but also part of the reason for that target is streaming. As in, what if the SSD is so fast that
Wow, those
as
graphics
the
suck.
player is turning around, it's possible to load textures for everything
What indie
behind
game
the
is
player in a
this?
split second.
Who is this,
If you
Impossible
figure
game?
that
The
it
fuck is
takes
this?
half a second
Actually,
to
Oh,
kind of
they
reminds me
announced
of
4
Monaco.
gigabytes of
They announced a new
data you can load.
Impossible
That sounds
game.
about right for next gen. Anyway, back to the hard drive. Another strategy for increasing effective read speed is to make big sequential chunks of data. For example, we might group all the data together for each city block. That
group all the
removes most
games
of the
together so I
seams,
can play 'em?
and the streaming gets faster. But there's a downside too, which is that
Dude, I'll take
frequently
Netflix at
used
this
data
point.
is
I don't
included
fucking
in
care.
many chunks.
Where's
and
the
therefore
hype
is on the
video?
hard drive many, many
Yeah,
times.
yeah, a hype
Marvel's
video and
Spider-Man uses
everybody in
this
the
strategy,
fucking
and though
row
it
is
works
still
very well
frozen.
for increasing the streaming speed, there's a
want the camera
massive
to zoom out and
duplication
it's like
as a
all-
result.
it's like
Some
a-
of the objects like mailboxes or
cardboard
news
cutouts
maps
or
are on
some
the
shit.
hard drive 400 times. What I'm describing here are things that cramp a creative
Cramp
director's
their
Yeah, they're
style.
fucking cramping our
Either
style.
level design gets a little bit boring in places, or the data is
Should be the
duplicated
tag on the
so many
PlayStation
times that it
5,
no
won't
longer
cramp your
fits on the Blu-ray
style.
disc. And you end up with hard limits on the player's run speed or driving speed. The player can't go faster than the load speed from the hard drive. And finally, I'm sure many of you have noticed that after a patch download, the PlayStation 4 will sometimes
Yes.
take a long time to install the patch. That's because when just part
Yeah,
of the
there's no
file has
file.
been changed,
Oh, look at
the
the
new
portions.
data can be downloaded pretty quickly.
What is
But
going
before
on?
the game boots up, a brand
Am I
new
alive?
file has to be
Am I dead?
constructed
I am
that
dead.
includes the changed portion.
I am dead.
Otherwise, every change would add a seek or two. Even so, you can occasionally see this happening on game titles. They start to hitch once they get patched enough. With an SSD, though, no seeks. So no need to make brand new files with the
seeks.
changes
No need.
incorporated into them, which means no installs as
I
you
agree,
know
no
them today.
need.
There's yet one more benefit, which is that system memory can be used much more
They're all
efficiently.
dead.
On PlayStation 4,
I don't believe
game
they're
data
real.
on the hard
I'm
drive
not
feels
gonna
very
believe the
distant
audience
and
is real.
difficult to use.
Just a bunch of
By the
people being
time you
weekend at
realize you
Bernie's
need
in
a
the
piece of
fucking
data,
audience.
much
They're
of it
Yeah,
is
dead
cardboard.
people.
So
They're
system memory
cardboard.
has to contain
They just
all of the
lighted
data
it
that can be
perfectly where you
used
can-
And they moved. There's some guy behind in the moves there once in a while.
That means
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of the 8 gigabytes
I'll deal with that one really quick.
is idle. It's just waiting there.
You see
to
his
be
hand on the bottom of the
potentially
frame.
used. On
It's
PlayStation
tripping
5,
me out right
the
now. I don't
SSD
like
is
it.
very close to being
Yeah.
like more RAM.
They're just
Typically,
so
it's fast
still.
enough that
They're
when you
really
realize you
interested.
need a piece
Either
of
that or
data,
they're asleep.
you can just
I don't know.
load it.
Yeah,
in
that's
and
me in a
use it.
lecture class
There's
right now.
no
I'm
need to
fucking
have
asleep.
lots of data parked in system memory waiting to potentially
Contains
be
data
used.
for the next 1 second
A
of gameplay.
different way of
Most RAM
saying
and
that
active
is that
use, low
most of
latency, high
RAM is
bandwidth
working
access, in
on the
some ways
game's
more like
behalf.
RAM.
This is one of the reasons that 16 gigabytes of
Gen
GDDR6
paradigm.
GDR?
is right for PlayStation 5.
DDR?
The
Where?
presence of the SSD reduces
GDDR is a
the
grand
Oh,
integration of
It's
the
Grand
inside.
Grand.
So, back to the dream of the SSD. Here's the set of targets. Boot the game in a
Dance
second.
Dance Central. What?
No load screens. Design freedom, meaning no twisted passages or long corridors.
They
More
should have had
game
us
on
write
disk
this.
and more game
Dance
on the
Dance
SSD.
Central.
And finally, those patch installs. Go
No
away.
long patch. Oh, good.
The
PS4's
reality, though,
patches
is that the
can blow me.
SSD is just one
Oh,
piece
look,
of the
I
puzzle.
like
There's
that
a lot
game.
of places where bottlenecks can occur between the SSD
Hey, go
and
check
the
out
game
our
code that uses
games
the
gone
data.
by of this.
You can see
Yeah,
this on
Gore,
PlayStation
put a link
4.
to it
If I
right
use
here.
an SSD
Oh,
that's
yeah,
10
here you
times
go.
the
You only
speed
have
of a
6 more
standard
days
hard
until it's
drive,
gone.
I'm probably only double the loading speed. If that.
Adrian, put a link to
For
it here.
PlayStation 5,
Oh,
our goal
shit.
was
I'm
not
out
just that
recording
the
this.
SSD itself be
Sorry.
100 times faster. It was that game loads and
You
streaming
only got
would be
6 more
100
days,
times
so let's
faster.
go.
So every
Yep.
single potential bottleneck needed to be addressed. And there are a lot of them. Let's look at check-in. and what happens when its overhead gets 100 times larger. Conceptually, check-in is a pretty simple process.
Someone's
Data
beating their
is
dick off
loaded
to this
into
right now.
system memory from the hard drive or SSD.
Or
It's examined. A
lot
few
of
values
people are,
are
I should
tweaked
say.
to check it in.
Oh,
and then
Psychonauts
it's
already
moved
sold
to its
out.
final location.
Huh?
At the SSD speed
Psychonauts went on sale
talking
15
about,
minutes ago.
That last part, moving the data, meaning
The
copying
physical
from
edition
one
that's
location
limited to
to
1,000.
another, takes roughly an entire next-gen
Yeah, I should have
CPU
figured that was
core.
going to go quick.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If all the overheads get 100 times larger, that will cripple the frame rate as
Sorry,
soon as
I'm
the
excited for
player
the Command
moves,
& Conquer
and that
fucking
massive stream of
Redux
data starts
Collector's
coming
Edition.
off the SSD. So to
Rather
solve
than
all
an
of that,
XP
we
check.
built a lot
Fucking
of
nerd.
custom hardware, namely a custom
Like Command & Conquer, go fuck yourself.
and a number of custom units in our main chip.
Yeah, I bet you don't like
The flash
sex, though.
controller in the SSD was
Fucking love
designed
sex.
for
You shut your
smooth
whore
and
mouth.
bottleneck-free operation, but also with games in mind. For
Command and
example, there are
Conquer and
6 levels
sex.
of priority
I like
when
Command.
reading
I like the Command and Conquer during
Priority
sex.
is very important. Some new
Nobody
location in
ever
the world
fucks
and a
me.
game requesting a
Mark
few
30's over
gigabytes
here
of
being
data.
smarter than we'll ever
And
be.
while
We're
those
the
extras are
story.
being loaded, an
Yeah.
enemy has to speak
Command and
a few
Conquer during
dying
fuck.
words. Having multiple priority levels lets the audio for those
Oh, custom
dying
flash
words
controller.
get
Look,
loaded
they're
immediately.
ecstatic in the audience. They're not
On one
real.
side,
Those
that
are not real
flash
people.
controller
It's gonna blow my mind when they all get up at the end.
To reach our
And they're made out of
bandwidth target of 5
cardboard.
gigabytes a second,
Yeah, they all walk off like
a
South Park
12
characters.
channel interface. 8 channels wouldn't be enough.
I like to imagine that they're
Resulting
real, but they're
bandwidth
just like
speed
fucking
is actually
photoshopped out from some
5.5
other footage.
gigabytes a second.
It's not even
Yeah,
like live
just like
reactions
the
of-
The
Devolver.
natural size that emerges for an SSD is 825 gigabytes. The key question for us was, is that enough? I mean, it's tempting to add more, but Flash certainly doesn't come cheap, and we have a responsibility to our gaming audience
Hell yeah,
to be
gaming audience.
cost-effective with regards to what we put in the
That's
console.
me.
Ultimately, we resolved this question by looking at the play patterns of a broad range of games.
Hell yeah, gamers.
We examined the specific games that they were playing
Rise
over
up,
the course
gamers.
of a weekend or a week.
It's
or a
our
month,
time.
And whether that set of games would fit properly on the SSD. We were able to establish that the friction caused by reinstalls or re-downloads would be quite low. And so we locked in on that 825 gigabyte size.
825 gigabyte
multiple
Oh, welcome,
size
Kyle.
SSD.
Those who want more storage can add it. I'll go through the details.
Welcome. You're about 15 minutes too
Back
late.
to the flash controller. On the other side, it
How you doing,
connects to
Kyle?
the
You
main
excited for
custom
today?
chip via 4 lanes of Gen 4 PCIe.
Are you excited for the
Yes.
custom flash
And
controller?
Inside the main custom chip is a
825
pretty
gigabusies?
hefty unit
That's
dedicated
really,
to
I can fit
that's
two
really
God of
small.
Before we
Wars.
talk about what that
Oh
does,
boy, I can
let's
fit
talk
one Red Dead
compression for a
Redemption.
They're gonna show off another
PlayStation 4
proprietary
used
thing like
Zlib
fucking
as its
Microsoft did.
compression
Look, the
We
Kraken!
decided to use it again on PlayStation
Oh, Sea of
5, but
Thieves!
on my
Oh my
22nd
God,
tour
it's
of
Pirates of the
developers, I learned
Caribbean
about a
3
new
or
format
2.
called Kraken.
Whichever one
for
has
ad
Kraken.
game tools. It's like Zlib's smarter cousin. Simple, similar types of algorithms, but about 10% better compression, which is pretty big. That means 10% more.
All right,
gain
that guy on the
a
left is
UHD
definitely real.
Blu-ray disc
Nobody else
or
is,
on
though.
DVD.
I don't
Kraken had
believe
only
it.
been out for
That's
a
the guy
year, but it was
managing all the
already
Photoshop
becoming
right
a
now.
de facto
Yeah, that's the
Everyone
guy.
else called in
Half
sick
of the
today.
friends I talked to were
Yeah,
either
oh
using
no.
it or getting ready to
Oh,
evaluate
not
it.
what I think
So we
it might be.
hustled and built a custom decompressor
Cold.
into the I/O
Oh,
unit,
okay.
one capable of handling over 5
I'm just gonna
gigabytes
lower this. This
for either using it or getting ready to
quality's
evaluate it.
fucking mercury.
So we hustled and built a custom decompressor into the
Don't need
I/O
no
unit,
1080p for
one
some
capable
dude.
of handling over 5
Alright, I see, yeah, I
gigabytes
see a
of
movement with the
high-performance
arm, and then I see the
data.
guy next to him, yeah.
After decompression,
They're
that
not
typically
real. I'm
becomes
not believing
8
it. I
or
don't
9
care.
gigabytes. But the unit itself is capable of outputting as much as 20.
Oh, I see the chat's right out. The crowd is fake.
If the data happens
Yeah,
to
right?
perform particularly well.
That guy is
By the way,
very
in terms
still.
of
The
performance,
one in the middle.
that custom decompressor equates to 9 of our Zen 2 cores. That's what it would take to decompress the
Zen
Kraken
2
stream with a
cores.
conventional CPU. There's a lot more in the
Zenyatta.
custom I/O unit, including a dedicated DMA controller. The game can direct exactly where it wants to send the data coming off of the SSD. This
see a
equates to
game?
another Zen
Just
2
one.
core or 2 in
Just
terms
one.
of its copy
Just one
performance.
game.
Its primary purpose
a
is
flash
to
one.
check
At the
in
end.
as a bottleneck.
Let's show Godfall or something.
They're only gonna
There's
show
two
like a tech
dedicated
demo,
I/O
like, oh, look at what
coprocessors
this
and a
game
large
could do
RAM
now.
pool. These
Yeah,
aren't Zen 2
they'll do
cores.
like
They're there
the
principally
rubber
to direct
ducks in
the
a
variety of custom
bathtub or whatever
hardware
the fuck that
around
was.
them.
when
They're gonna
they
show
showed up
128
PS3.
One of the
Marios.
coprocessors is dedicated to
Oh
SSD
no.
I/O.
That- you
This
can't
lets
do
us
that.
bypass traditional
Can't do
file
that, Sony,
IOs
bro.
and its bottlenecks when reading. from
Can't
the
do that, Sony bros.
The other is responsible for memory mapping, which I
How long
know
is this
doesn't
supposed to
sound
be?
like anything related to the
52
SSD,
minutes.
but a lot of developers map
What?
and remap memory
52
as
minutes.
part of file I/O.
52
And
minutes?
this too
Yeah.
can become a bottleneck. There are coherency engines. to
30 more
assist the
minutes, bro.
coprocessor. Coherency comes up a lot in places.
we're fucking
Probably
powering
the
through
biggest
this.
coherency issue is stale data in
That's
the GPU.
coherency engines.
Flushing all of the GPU caches whenever the SSD
What
is
does that
dead
mean?
is an unattractive option. It could
don't really
really
care.
hurt the GPU performance.
As long as
So
it plays a
we've
game.
implemented a gentler way of doing things, where the coherency engines inform the GPU of the overwritten address ranges, and custom scrubbers in several dozen GPU caches do pinpoint evictions
Did
of
Xbox
just
do
those
something like
address
this?
ranges. The best thing
no.
is
They-
game
they just
development, when
announced
you read
it
from
in
the
like a
SSD, you
blog.
don't
No,
need to know
they
any
just
of
put it
this.
in an Xbox
You
blog.
don't even need to know that your data
Which is what Sony was doing with
You
Wired
just
for a while, but
indicate what data
I guess
you'd
they
like
had to
read
come out
from
because
your
Microsoft
original
showed everything off.
uncompressed file, and where you'd like to put it, and the whole process of loading it
If he says
happens
fuck
invisibly
Xbox
to
in like
you
any point
and
in
at
this,
very high speed.
then I'll
Back
clap.
to the dream.
I'm in.
Thanks to all of that
I'm
surrounding
in.
hardware, our
Like,
That is
5.9
actually
competition.
really.
megabits a second really should
That is a
translate
really
into
fast
something
read
like
speed.
100 times
Oh, the
faster
ISDs
than
are gonna
ever
be
before,
fast.
and allow the dream of
Thank you,
no
PC
load
sucks,
Nah, that's
Kyle.
like
super fast
that's like way
streaming
better
to
than
become
like
a
any
reality.
regular SSD
Having said
you
that,
can get on a PC.
expandability of our SSD is
No,
quite
that,
important.
that's right there with
For
M2
For
drives.
dedicated-
very well
for
want to add
dedicated
storage
SSD,
to whatever
yeah.
we put in the console.
For a dedicated M2 drive,
Now,
that's about
the
on
kind
par.
of storage you need depends on how you're going to use it.
But it's
If you
dedicated,
have
so
an
there's not
extensive
any
PlayStation 4
bottlenecking.
library and you'd like to take
Ah,
advantage
bro.
of backwards
Look how
compatibility
quick
to
it
play
is.
those games on PlayStation 5, then a large external hard drive is ideal. You can leave your games on the hard drive and play them directly from there, thus saving the pricier SSD storage for your PlayStation 5 titles, or you can copy your active
See,
PlayStation 4
bam.
titles to the SSD.
PS5
If your
titles?
purpose in
Right,
adding more
but
storage is to play PlayStation 5 titles, though,
It's not being
ideally you would
used,
add to your SSD storage. We will be
for
supporting
OS and other
certain
stuff, or at
M2
least
SSDs. These
not
are
using a
internal
whole lot
drives
for
that you can
OS.
get on the
It still
open
has to use
and install and
everything for
play
OS.
in
The
the
PlayStation's
PlayStation
OS
Yeah,
has to
but it's
run
not
off
gonna
for
it.
be
which
as
ones we support
much
and
as
when.
PC.
I'll get to that in a moment. They connect through the custom I/O unit just like our SSD does. So they can take full advantage of the decompression, I/O coprocessors, and all the other features I was talking about. Here's the catch, though. That commercial drive has to be at least as fast as ours. Games that rely on the speed of our SSD need to work flawlessly with any M2 drive. When I gave the Wired interview last year, I said that the PlayStation 5 SSD was faster than anything
Shoutouts to
available on
Wired.
PC. At the time, commercial M2 drives used PCIe 3.0, and 4 lanes of that cap out at 3.5 gigabytes a second. In other words, no PCIe 3.0 drive can hit the required spec. M2 drives with PCIe 4.0 are now out in the market. We're getting samples and seeing 4 or 5 gigabytes a second from them. By year's end, I expect there will be drives that saturate 4.0 and support 7 gigabytes a second. Having said that, we are comparing apples and
And
oranges.
that guy's getting
because
antsy now.
That commercial M2 drive will
Oh,
have
it's
its own
painful.
architecture, its own flash controller,
Scratching
and
his
so on.
face.
For
He's like,
example,
I want to get the
Doing
fuck
that
out
these
of
days.
here.
specification lays out a priority scheme for requests that the M2 drives
you
can
go.
use. And that
See him
scheme
scratch
is
his face
pretty
right
Oh,
nice.
there. Oh, she
It
moved.
only has 2.
Oh, shit, they are
full
real.
priority
Yeah, the
levels.
guy in the middle
Our drives
moved.
support
This is
6.
bullshit.
They're getting bored.
We can hook up a drive with only 2 priority levels, definitely, but our custom I/O unit has to arbitrate the extra
Oh, yeah.
priorities
Yeah.
rather than the M2 drive's
I
wonder
flash
who
controller.
directed this.
And so the M2 drive needs a
Mark
little extra
Cerny.
speed to take care of
Francis
issues
Ford
arising
Coppola.
from the different. That commercial drive also needs to physically fit inside of the bay we created in
All right, I'm
PlayStation
just going
5
to
for
refresh
M2.
because you're way ahead of me. I don't want some shit being spoiled. If there's anything to
Oh
spoil.
no, it's
of an M2
speed.
drive. And some M2 drives
Yeah,
have
don't spoil the
giant heat
speeds.
sinks. In fact,
Oh, it's
You're
Beyond
right.
Good
In
Evil
fact-
2 right now.
Oh, it's coming
some
out
of them even have
tomorrow.
their own fans.
Exclusively in Target
Right now,
on
we're getting
PS4.
M2 drive samples and benchmarking them in various ways. When games hit beta as they get ready for the PlayStation 5 launch at year end, we'll also be doing some compatibility testing to make sure that the architecture of particular M2 drives isn't too foreign for the games to handle.
You
Once
got
we've
it,
done
Sony
that
Bros.
compatibility testing, we should be able to start letting you know which drives will physically fit and which drive samples have benchmarked appropriately high in our testing. It would be great if that happened by launch, but it's likely to be a bit past it. So please hold off on getting that M2 drive until you hear from us. Okay, back to our principles. Balancing evolution and revolution is the second.
Oh,
one.
no.
This was definitely a recurring theme with the GPU.
Nintendo Revolution.
We need new GPU features and capabilities. If we only have more performance, it's not really a new generation of console. Of course, many of these capabilities result in more performance. That's part of why a PlayStation 5 teraflop is more powerful than a PlayStation 4 teraflop. But we aren't just looking for the performance. We also need the ability to do something with the GPU that could not have been done before. And we need higher performance for what? Every time we double the performance of some GPU,
Here I go!
we don't want to find out we've doubled the power consumed and the heat produced. But at the same time, we have to make sure the GPU can
compatibility.
run games.
Alright,
And
which
we have
one's
to ensure that the architecture is easy for the
backwards
developers to
compatibility of
adopt.
what?
Now,
What?
What systems? What systems, you coward? Tell me.
As our solution,
Do full compatibility, no balls.
Yeah, no
we made sure
fucking
that if
balls.
there were new significant
These are the crowds are chanting that stuff out.
the GPU
No
supports
balls,
ray
no
tracing,
balls.
but you don't have to use ray tracing to make your game.
Is this the
The
only
GPU
people in the
supports
audience?
primitive shaders, but you can release your first game on PlayStation 5 without making any use of them. Before I get into the capabilities of the GPU, I'd like to make clear 2 points that can be quite confusing. First, we have a custom AMD GPU based on their RDNA 2 technology. What does that mean? AMD is continuously improving and revising their tech. For RDNA 2, their goals were, roughly speaking, to reduce power consumption by re-architecting the GPU
Stop,
to put data
Crably,
closer to where
and
it's needed,
listen.
to optimize the GPU for performance, and to add a new, more advanced feature set. But that feature set is malleable, which is to say that we have our own needs for PlayStation, and that can factor into what the AMD roadmap becomes. So collaboration is born. If we bring concepts to AMD that are felt to be widely useful, then they can be adopted into RDNA 2 and used broadly, including in PC GPUs. If the ideas
I'm going
are
insane!
specific to what we're trying to accomplish, like the GPU cache scrubbers I was talking about, then they end up being just for us. If you see a similar discrete GPU available as a PC card at roughly the same time as we release our console, that means our collaboration with AMD succeeded. In producing technology useful in both worlds.
We'll see, but it's not gonna be some fucking like
simply incorporated into
good ass trailer. It's gonna be a new game, and it's gonna be some like demonstration shit.
Means it's dangerous to rely on teraflops.
That's what they did with PS4. That was the first game they showed with
CPU count should be
that was hype, dude.
Well.
Oh,
In
yeah,
the
it was
case
so
of
fucking
CPUs,
hype.
we all understand this. The PlayStation
game.
4 and PlayStation 5 each have 8 CPUs, but we never think that meant the capabilities and performance are equal.
I was so
It's
hyped,
the same
bro.
for CUs. For one,
Alright,
they're
they-
getting much larger over
They
time.
just said backwards
Adding new
compatible
features
PS4.
means adding
Wait.
lots of transistors. In fact, the transistor count for a PlayStation 5 CU is 62% larger than the transistor count for a PlayStation 4 CU. Second, the PlayStation 5 GPU is backwards compatible with PlayStation 4. What does that mean? One way you can achieve backwards compatibility
Yeah, you're way
is to
ahead
put
of
the
me. You
previous
just said-
console's
Wait,
chipset
what?
in the new console,
Wait,
like
yeah.
we did with some PlayStation 3s. But that's, of course, extremely expensive. A better way is to incorporate any differences in the previous console's logic into the new console's custom chips, meaning that even as the technology evolves, the logic and feature set that
I think
PlayStation
we're only
4
getting
and
PS4
PlayStation
backwards
4 Pro
compatibility,
titles
bros.
rely on
No,
is
no,
available in
no.
backwards compatibility modes. One advantage of this strategy is that once backwards compatibility is in the console, it's in. It's not as
Rip.
if a cost down
It's
will
in.
remove backwards compatibility like it did on PlayStation 3.
Can't play my copy.
Achieving this unification of functionality took years of efforts by AMD, as
know.
any
Fugitive
roadmap
Hunter?
advancement creates a potential divergence in logic. Running PS4 and PS4 titles at boosted
Can't play my
frequencies has
copy of
also
Ty
added
the
complexity.
Tasmanian Tiger
The boost
2.
is truly massive this time around, and some
Almost
game
all of them?
testing
Why would
and
some not be able to
testing
play on
has
there?
to be done on a title-by-title basis.
You can't play
If they were
Results
coding
are
for
excellent,
specific,
though. We recently took a
basically
look
if they were
at
coded
100
only with
PlayStation
the
4 titles
specifications
that ran
of,
by
like, for instance, like
and
the
we're
launch
expecting
PS4 in
almost
mind,
all of
they
them to
may
be
not be able to
playable at launch
optimize it
on
properly
PlayStation
for the specifications of it.
It
Like, they
has
could
legacy
With
mode for
regards
that,
to new
though.
features, as I said,
It does,
our
but they still have
strategy
to
is
go through and make
calibrate
sure
those
that it's
around, but at the
specifically
same time
updated
not
for
to
it, which some
require
people
use
may
of
not
the new
do.
GPU capabilities.
Got
For
too
more
lazy,
than a
bros.
decade, GPUs have imposed restriction on game engines. Software.
So, okay, so then there's no
processing,
PS3
but
back
for the most
compatibility then.
part, dedicated
Doesn't look
hardware
like
is
it.
responsible
Unless they're
for
hiding that
triangles
information
and
still.
geometry that the vertices
Even though they
have.
just had the perfect opportunity
That
to say that
means
they could have just
it's
did it
not
right there.
possible to do even
Yeah, man,
basic
wake me up finally.
optimizations, such as aborting processing of a vertex.
It's weird because
if all
they
geometry
have a
is
patent that
also
allows them to do some kind of weird
PlayStation
backwards
5 has
compatibility.
Make a
new unit
PS2
called the
legacy
geometry
console, you have to
engine,
pay
which brings
$200.
Make a
handling
PS2
triangles
mini.
and
Fuck
other
it.
It's
primitives
possible,
without
honestly,
full
that it's just
programmatic
not
control.
finalized
As a
and
game
they don't want to
developer,
say
see
anything
your
until it's
existence
100%
and use
working.
the PlayStation 5 GPU as if it were no more capable than the PS4 GPU, or you can use this new intelligence in various ways. Simple usage could be performance optimization, such as removing backfaced or off-screen vertices and triangles. More complex usage involves something called primitive shaders, which allow the game to synthesize geometry on the fly as it's being rendered. It's a brand new capability. Using primitive shaders on PlayStation 5 will allow for a broad variety of techniques, including smoothly varying level of detail, addition of procedural detail to close-up objects, and improvements to particle effects and other visual special effects. Another major new feature of our custom RDNA 2-based GPU is ray tracing, using the same strategy as AMD's upcoming PC GPUs. The CUs contain a new specialized unit called the intersection engine, which can calculate the intersection of rays with boxes and triangles. To use the intersection engine, first you build what is called
Box Boy
an
and Box
acceleration
Girl
system.
announced for
It's data in
PS5.
RAM that contains to check a ray.
I'm excited.
against
Fucking ray
computer
tracing looks great.
While the
You don't even know how to
intersection
spell
engine is
ray
processing
tracing.
the
Shut the
requested
hell
ray
up.
triangle or ray box intersections, the shaders are free to do other work. Having said that, the ray tracing instruction
Yeah, there
is
is.
pretty memory intensive, so it's a good mix
Yeah, there is
with
what?
logic-heavy code.
There is a need for ray tracing.
There's of course no need to use ray tracing. PS4 graphics
You're
engines
not
will
that
run
ahead
just
of me.
fine on PlayStation 5.
just said that.
But it presents an
You're
opportunity
not missing
for
anything,
those
don't
interested.
worry.
No,
I'm
when
thinking
there is
it'll
something to
take
miss, I
less
don't want
than a
fucking
million rays a second to
fucking
have a
idiots
big
yelling it
impact
out.
on audio. That should be enough for audio occlusion and some reverb calculations. With a bit
don't like
more of the
using
GPU invested in ray tracing, it should be possible to do some very nice global illumination. Having said that, adding ray-traced shadows and reflections to a traditional graphics engine could easily take hundreds of millions of rays a second, and full ray tracing could take billions. How far can we go? I'm
You said
starting
the
to
word
get quite
bullish.
bullish. I've already seen a PlayStation 5 title that's successfully using ray tracing-based reflections in complex animated scenes with only modest costs. Another set of issues for the GPU involved size.
Just had a
and
mild
frequency.
panic attack.
How
Amazon's like, hey, your
the GPU
ordered
and what
date has
frequency.
changed for
Yeah,
fucking
they
Final
already
Fantasy
did.
This is a
again.
balancing
Mistake.
act. The chip has a cost, and there's a cost for whatever we use to supply that chip with power.
It'd be funny if it got delayed for you, though.
In addition, I like running the GPU at higher frequency. Let me show you why. Here's two possible configurations for a GPU roughly of the level of the PlayStation 4 Pro. This is a thought experiment. Don't take these configurations too seriously. If you just
I was about
calculate
to.
teraflops, you get the same number. But
take
actually, the
it very
performance
fucking
is
serious.
noticeably different because teraflops is defined as the
I'm fucking
computational
serious,
capability
bro.
of the vector ALU. That's just one part of the GPU. There are a lot of other units. And those other units all run faster when the GPU frequency is higher. At 33% higher frequency, rasterization goes 33% faster. Processing the command buffer goes that much faster. The L2 and other caches have that much higher bandwidth, and so on. About the only downside is that system memory is 33% further away in terms of cycles. But the large number
me wanna
of
play video
benefits
games.
more than counterbalance that. As a
Gord,
friend of mine
you
said,
gotta go from
"A
this to just
rising
having to play
tide
Doom to
lifts
cleanse your
all boats."
mind.
Also,
I can't
it's
fucking do
easier
anything
to
to cleanse
fully
my mind.
use 36 CUs in parallel
People
than
that
it
like
is to
this are
fully use
freaks.
48 CUs.
You hear that,
The
David?
Shut
triangles
up.
are smaller,
Fucking
so it's
freaks!
harder to fill all those CUs with useful work. So there's a lot to be said for faster, assuming you can handle the resulting
Fucking
power and heat
monotone,
issues.
sleepy.
The
bitch
axe
talking
takes
about-
so
We
much
haven't
power
always
consumption.
done
Who
the
gives a
best
shit?
job.
Shut up.
Part of the reason for that
The axe takes too
historically,
much consumption.
Our process for setting CPU
Okay,
and
don't
GPU
get mad that you
frequencies
don't
has
understand
relied on some
anything.
heavy-duty guesswork
I'm not
with
even
regards
up to the
how
part
much
you're talking about.
electrical power games will consume, and how much
don't get
heat
mad
will
'cause
be
you don't
produced as a
understand.
result inside of the console.
I don't want to understand.
Power
I want
consumption
to play
varies
games.
a lot from game to game. When I play God of War
is
on
this?
the PS4
Road to
Pro,
PS5
I
my
know
ass.
the power consumption
This
is high
sucks.
just by the fan
If
rate.
you like this, you're a
But
fucking
power
moron.
isn't simply about engine quality. It's about the minutia of what
Well,
When
Can't you
I had
just
my
enjoy things in
SNES, I
life?
was wondering how they made it
counterintuitive,
work.
but processing dense geometry typically consumes less power than processing
Put a goddamn
simple
cartridge
geometry,
in this play.
which is, I suspect, why Horizon's
Fucking
map
children.
screen, with its low triangle count, makes my PS4 Pro heat up so much.
This is why they keep this shit at
I'll
GDC,
process on the
because
previous
people like who are like, fuck
console.
this.
Yes, with the maximum
Not to mention
power
the fucking
consumption
chat.
in the entire
Boring.
console
Wake me up
lifetime.
when
It is fucking boring.
The worst
How is it not
interesting.
boring?
Shut up.
Interesting my ass.
and prepare a cooling solution that we
Interesting.
think will be
Look at the
quiet
X.
at that
High
power.
power. Wow, so
If
fucking
we get it
interesting.
right,
The
fan
fuck
noise
does
is
any of this
normal.
mean?
If we get it wrong,
There's
the
a
console will be
fucking there's a
quite loud
danger
for the
symbol.
higher
What the
power
fuck
games.
does that
And there's
mean?
even a
Why is
chance
that
it will
half
overheat
power
and shut
consumption?
down
Or you can always just
the
swap off
power
right now to
consumption.
watch the Overwatch hero.
PlayStation 5
I'd rather
is
watch, like,
especially challenging
like a
because the
ISIS
CPU
beheading
supports
video.
256
Holy
native
shit.
Fuck
instructions
this.
that consume
Jesus.
a lot of power.
Fuck.
These are great here and there,
Fucked
but
up.
presumably only
They have more
minimally
charisma
used.
in it.
Or are they? If we plan for major
give a
256-bit instruction
You're a
usage,
bad person.
we need
My
to set
YouTube's
the
gone
CPU
anyway, I don't
clock
give a fuck.
substantially lower, or
The
noticeably
rest of the
increase
Blue
the
Ruby
size
podcast
of the
does
power
not
supply.
condone the
Fuck
statements
Sony
of Gore the
fanboys,
movie
too.
god.
Sony fanboys
So,
are dumb.
after much discussion, we decided to go in a very different direction.
I'll
on
take
PlayStation
everything
5.
down with me.
We built a
Yeah,
GPU
Gors
with
going down with the ship.
36
Fuck it.
CUs.
Yeah,
Mind
fuck
you,
it.
RDNA2 CUs are large. Each has 62%
So
more
fucking
transistors
boring.
than the CUs we were using on PlayStation 4.
Jesus
So,
Christ.
if we compare transistor counts,
Let's
36
compare 'em, bro.
RDNA2 CUs equates to roughly
Wow,
58
so many.
PlayStation 4 CUs. It is a fairly sizable GPU. Then we went with a variable frequency strategy for PlayStation 5, which is to say we continuously run the GPU and CPU in boost mode. We supply
get my
a generous
Switch.
amount of electrical power and then increase the
Nintendo
frequency
knows
of
the
GPU
fucking
and
show
CPU
games.
until they reach the capabilities of the
Open
system's
up their
cooling
goddamn
solution.
console.
It's
I wanna
a
open up my
completely
fucking
different
wrist right
paradigm.
now.
Rather than running at constant frequency and letting power vary based on the workload, we run at essentially constant power and let the frequency vary based on the workload. We then tackled the engineering challenge of a cost-effective and high-performance cooling solution designed for that specific power level. In some ways, it becomes a simpler
Gors
problem
started
because
playing
there are
Root
no
Factory
more
4
unknowns. There's
special.
no need to demonstrate power consumption in the worst-case game we might have. As for the details of the cooling solution, we're saving them for our teardown. I think we'll be quite happy with what the engineering team came up with.
Oh,
So,
fuck.
how fast can we run the GPU and CPU with this strategy? The simplest approach would be to look at the actual temperature of the silicon die and throttle the frequency on that basis. But that won't work. It fails to create a consistent PlayStation 5 experience. It wouldn't do to run a console slower simply because it was in a hot room. So rather than look at the actual temperature of the silicon die, we look at the activities that the GPU and CPU are performing and set the frequencies on that basis, which makes everything deterministic and repeatable. While we're at it, we also use AMD's Smart Shift technology and send any unused power from the CPU to the GPU so it can squeeze out a few more pixels. The benefits of this strategy are quite large. Running a GPU at 2 gigahertz was looking like an unreachable target with the old fixed frequency strategy. With this new paradigm, we're able to run way over that. In fact, we have to cap the GPU frequency at 2.23 gigahertz so that we can guarantee that the on-chip logic operates properly. 36 CUs at 2.23 gigahertz is 10.3 teraflops, and we expect the GPU to spend most of its time at
Yeah, you should
or
be like
close
side by
to
side comparing this with the
frequency
Xbox specs.
performance. Similarly, running the CPU at 3
Yeah, I'll be taking a look at that
caused
later.
headaches with the old strategy.
I didn't check out what the
Now
Xbox
we can run
specs
it
were
as
yet.
high as 3.5
Digital
gigahertz.
Foundry already has
It
an
spends
article about
most of
that.
its time at that frequency. That doesn't mean all games will be running at 2.23 gigahertz and 3.5 gigahertz. When that worst-case game arrives, it will run at a lower clock speed, but not too much lower. To reduce power by 10%, it only takes a couple of percent reduction in frequency, so I'd expect any downclocking to be pretty minor. All things considered, the change to a variable frequency approach will show significant
New
gains.
dreams like full backwards compatibility.
The final of our 3 principles was about
That's
finding
right.
new dreams. It's important for us on the hardware team to find new ways to expand or deepen gaming.
You gotta
and
keep that
that's
beefy
what
boy
led us to
alive.
a focus on 3D audio.
They're gonna have
Players
HD
will
Rumble.
experience the game through the visuals,
shit.
through
Oh,
audio,
you're missing it.
and through
You're
the
missing it.
feedback we receive from the controller, such as rumble or haptics. Personally, I feel a game is just dead without audio. Visuals are, of course, important, but the impact of audio is huge as well. At the same time, the audio team on a game project has to do a lot with a little. For example, on PlayStation 4, there's fierce competition for the Jaguar CPU cores. Audio typically ends up getting just a fraction of a core. That's not much of a computational resource, particularly when you consider that the
cracking
visuals
open a
run
cold
at
one.
30 or 60 frames a second, but audio processing needs to happen at almost 200 times a second. So, it's been tough going making
Big
forward
boy.
progress on
Yeah, I
audio
agree,
with
it's been
PlayStation
tough.
4, particularly when PlayStation 3 was such a beast when it came to audio. The SPUs in Cell were almost a perfect device for audio rendering. Simple pipelined algorithms could really take advantage of asynchronous DMA and frequently reached
boy, here we go.
100% utilization of the floating point unit.
Oh boy.
There's unfortunately nothing comparable on PlayStation 4. Probably the most dramatic progress in the PlayStation 4 generation has been with virtual reality. The PSVR hardware has its own audio unit. It supports about
I do love,
50
yeah,
pretty
well,
decent 3D
when they
sounds.
just talk shit in the last things
And
they
this
had.
provided a hint as to where we could go with audio.
Had 50
as well
kinda
as
unique
some
things on
valuable
PSVR.
experiments. Not to oversimplify, but here were our goals for audio on
You
PlayStation
can
4.
visualize the audio now.
The first goal was great
Visualize
audio
the
for everyone,
audio.
not just VR users or soundbar
We're gonna
owners
have
or
Windows
headphone
Media
users.
Visualizer
That
in
meant
here.
audio had to be part of the console.
Can't wait
It
to
couldn't
see
be
it go
a
up and down.
peripheral. The second goal was to support
look
hundreds
at
of
that.
sound
There's
slides
We
stopping
didn't
for anyone
want
else.
developers to have to pick and choose
No.
what sounds.
Yeah, they're loading it kinda bad.
I wish the stream would
We wanted
stop.
every sound in the game
Jesus
to have
Christ.
dimensionality. And finally, we wanted to really take on
Why do you even want to do this?
That's
presence
cool.
and
What the fuck?
locality. Now, when we say presence, we mean the feeling that you're actually there. You've entered the matrix. It's not, of course,
Whoa,
something we
Matrix,
do
bros!
perfectly. The idea was
I'm going
Whoa!
insane!
Over 20 years ago, we're
Instead,
still
use
making
lots of
Matrix
3D audio
references.
sources for raindrops hitting the ground at all sorts of locations
Hey,
around
Matrix
you.
is
Then
back
at some
in.
point, your brain
Whoa,
will
it's
take it over and
back!
You begin to have this feeling. This
Keanu!
feeling of a real presence inside the virtual world of the game. This has the capacity to affect your appreciation of the game, just like music in a game does. The concept of locality is simpler. It's just your sense of where the audio is coming from. To the right of you, behind you, above you. This can immerse you.
Hey, go check out our
And it
games.
can
Come buy
also
it.
Oh, look,
Dead
Dead Space. Yeah, another one. They're just helping
To
us
use
out, man.
Dead Space as an
Hopefully
example.
they show
I know, old
Barkley
school.
shut up
They
at
show-
the gym.
yeah, they
Fighting
show
enemies
Gore-
in
Gore's
fairly
video on
dark,
there.
spooky locations.
It's weird
Back
they're
in the
showing
day,
a
if you played the
PS3
game
game.
using the TV speakers,
it's
you
weird
could
they're
tell that
showing
there
an
was
old-ass
one
piece
last
of shit
enemy
game.
growling and hunting you down, but it was difficult to tell quite where that enemy was. With headphones, you could tell that the enemy was somewhere on the right, which let you deduce, if you couldn't see it, that it must be somewhere behind and to your right. But with 3D audio with good locality, the idea is you know the enemy
They
is
took Gore out.
precisely there, and you turn.
We got
and you
about
take it out.
7 minutes left.
So, how do we know where a sound is coming from in the first place? Well, all those bumps and folds in the ear have a meaning, evolutionarily speaking.
Think about it. What if
Based
all
on
this
what
leads up
direction
to the
sound is
fact that
coming
where they're
from,
talking about
sound
God of
is
War and
bouncing
Dead
around
Space,
inside
that there's
the
new
ear,
God of War
there's
and
some
Dead Space down the
constructive and
road for
destructive
PS5?
interference, and the result
Oh
is a change in
my
volume.
god.
The phase of the sound also shifts, depending
gonna
on what
happen.
path the sound wave took to reach the ear canal. These volume changes and phase shifts are different for each direction and also vary depending on the frequency of the sound. Head size and head shape also impact the sound in a similar fashion.
Alright.
The way that the sound changes, based on direction and frequency, can be encoded in a table called the head-related transfer function, or HRTF. Here's part of one. The vertical axis is the frequency, the horizontal axis is the direction, front, back, left, right, and the color gives the degree of attenuation of the sound at that frequency. The HRTF is
Cool
as
colors.
unique to an individual as a fingerprint is. In fact, you're looking at mine right now.
This is his
Here's how we measure an HRTF. We've taken hundreds of people through this process. We put a microphone in the subject's left and right ear canals, and then
That was like the
subject
most
down in the
uncomfortable
middle
experience.
of 22 speakers. We then
I
play
do.
an audio
Stream?
sweep from each speaker as we rotate the subject. In the course of 10 or 20 minutes, we're able to sample the HRTF at over 1,000 locations. Using an HRTF when rendering audio
You ever
creates
get tired of
unparalleled
talking?
quality, but it's
Oh.
computationally expensive. The simplest way to use an HRTF
Talking
is to
for 40
process a
minutes.
sound source to make it appear
Shut
as if
up.
it's coming from one of those 1,000 locations we sample. Unfortunately, the processing has to be done in frequency domain rather than time domain, so there's multiple fast Fourier transforms needed for every sound source for every audio tick. That's a lot of multiplies. This computational complexity was the determining factor for our strategy. It meant we had to bite the bullet and design and build a custom hardware unit for 3D audio.
I like that game.
Collectively, we're referring to the hardware unit and the proprietary algorithms we run on it as Tempest 3D Audio Tech. The meaning of 3D audio and technology should be pretty obvious here. As for Tempest, I feel it really reflects our goals with audio. It suggests a certain intensity of experience and also hints at your presence within it. We're calling the hardware unit that we built the Tempest engine. It's based on AMD's GPU technology. We modified a compute unit in such a way as to make it very close to the SPUs in PlayStation 3. Remember when I said that they were ideal for audio? So the Tempest engine has no caches, just like an SPU. All data access is via DMA, just like an SPU. Our target was that it would have more power than a CPU, thanks to the parallelism that a GPU can achieve, and that it would be more efficient than our GPU, thanks to the SPU-like architecture. The goal being to make possible near 100% utilization of the CU's vector units. Where we ended up is a
It's
unit
handy.
with roughly the same SIMD power and bandwidth as all 8 Jaguar cores in the PlayStation 4 combined. If we were to use the same algorithms as PSVR, that's enough for something like 5,000 sound sources. But of course, we want to use more complex algorithms, and we don't need anything like that number of sounds. It would have been wonderful if a simpler strategy was using Dolby Atmos peripherals.
Say
to
that
achieve our
again.
goals, but we wanted 3D audio
Please
for all,
don't.
not just those with licensed soundbars or the like.
Wrap it up, B.
Also, we wanted many hundreds of sound sources, not
I
just
think
32
my
with
work
Atmos.
orientation hour is going to be more
Finally,
exciting.
we wanted to be able to throw an
Congrats, by the
overwhelming
way.
amount of processing power at the problem.
I mean,
and it wasn't clear
it took
what
me
any
10 minutes to get a
peripheral
job.
In fact, with the Tempest engine,
I didn't have
we've
to
even
upload a
got enough
resume.
power that we can allocate.
I
some
told Kyle, hey Kyle,
to the
Amazon's
extent
hiring. He's
that
like, oh, are
games
they?
won't
All
make
right.
use
He
of
was like, I'll be back in
convolution
20 minutes. Comes
and
back,
other
all right, I got a
algorithms
job
that are either
orientation
computationally
tomorrow.
expensive or need high bandwidth. But the primary purpose of the Tempest engine.
Yeah, I did that in
3D
the entire span that you were gone.
Now, 3D audio is a major
Yesterday.
academic
While you're
research topic.
beating your
It's safe
dick
to
off
say
or
that
whatever.
no one in the world has
You
all
got a
of the
job at
answers.
Amazon.
And the set of algorithms that has to be invented and implemented to realize our vision for 3D audio is immense. For example, use
Oh yes, my HTRF audio samples. Oh my
Oh
god.
my
I
god,
talked
the
about making a sound
HTFR
source
I'm
appear
gonna
audio?
boom.
from one of
Oh
those
my
1,000
god, I already
HRTF
fucking
sample
finished in my
locations.
pants
But
5
for high
times.
quality 3D audio, we have to handle other possibilities.
Wow, Archie.
The sound source
Oh
might
my
not
god,
be at one
I
of the
can't even
1,000
say it, it's so
HRTF
good.
sample locations. So we have to blend the HRTF
My
data
god's
from the
gonna
closest
fucking give me
locations
an
that
ear
we have.
orgasm.
The
It's gonna be
sound source
so
might be
good.
moving, which needs very special
Mac's gonna
handling as
sound
that
great.
blend keeps changing.
Why did you even
And
want to
that
do
causes
this if you're gonna
various
act this way,
artifacts
Gors? This is
in
kind of
the
But
interesting.
they literally
Or
did not
the
say
sound
this
source
was
might
going
have
to
a
be.
size to it,
I
meaning
figured this
that you
was gonna
feel as
be.
if it's coming
Fuck
from
that.
rather
The only thing I would
There's
say
also
is that
whole
they did
categories
this
of
7 years
approaches to be
ago.
handled.
Yeah,
3D
it's
audio
exactly
Oh
the same
yeah,
one.
7 years ago. Thank
individual
you.
processing.
They
It's
did
actually
7
what it
years
last
ago.
time.
But
Yep, 7
alternatively,
years ago. Thank you.
ambisonics can be
You're
used
proving
for
my
3D
point.
audio. Ambisonics speak somewhat
Because nobody
like the
learns anything
spherical
in 7
harmonics used
years.
in computer graphics. And finally,
God,
there's audio
obviously
devices.
not this time.
The player might be using headphones or TV speakers or have a higher-end surround sound setup with
God
6
damn,
or
that
more
should-
speakers,
that
all
should
of
be
which
something
need
else.
different approaches. That's a lot of
I wouldn't accept
variations.
anything else.
It's nice to have the computational resources.
I'm gonna
of the
end
Tempest engine,
this
but
conference
it's
with
clear
the
that achieving
10-minute
our ultimate
Conference?
goals with
audio
3D audio is
presentation.
going to be a multi-year step.
Where's the offended? You just called it a conference.
Having said that,
Conference
headphone audio
might be
I mean, what if
communication is
this would
largely
have been at
completed.
GDC? So
It was a natural place for us
God
to start.
damn.
With headphones, we control exactly what
Jeez, he
each ear
sucks.
hears, and therefore the algorithmic development and implementation are more
If it was a
straightforward.
GDC, I would know not to
For
watch it.
TV speakers and stereo speakers, we're in the process of
For
implementing
sure, because everything
virtual
at
surround
GDC
sound.
sucks.
The idea being that if you're
Yeah,
sitting in
'cause
a
you have
sweet
no
spot
interest
in
in how
front of the
things
TV,
work.
then the sound
Why-
can
who
be
the
made
fuck
to feel
cares?
as if it's coming from any direction.
Because you know it. Does that change anything? No.
Virtual
So shut
surround
up.
sound has a lot in
Interesting to
common
know,
with
Gors. Some
stereo
people
audio.
just like having more knowledge.
I was so
Complex
interested
because
on how
the
this
left
box
ear can
works.
hear the right speaker.
Oh, they
Sorry, you
put
like
a
to be fucking
motherboard in.
ignorant.
Basic
Oh man,
implementation
the
of virtual
sound.
surround
Oh, it
sound up
sounds
and
so
running. We're
good.
now looking
I'm
at
glad I know how it
increasing the
works.
size of that sweet spot, which is to say,
That really
making the
changes
area
a
you
lot.
need to be in to feel the 3D
Don't
effect.
have to change
useless
anything.
fuck.
To just
And we're
give you
also
some
working to
information
boost
and
the
learn
sense of
something.
locality.
Learn what? What am I
Headphone
learning? A
audio
bunch of
is
fucking
the current gold
acronyms?
standard for 3D audio on
HFTR4?
PlayStation 5.
What the fuck
But
does
we're
that
going to see
mean?
what we
Oh,
can
it
do
means
to bring virtual surround
fuck
sound
it. It's
to
just
a
made up
similar
shit.
level. After
Oh,
which,
virtual
we'll
surround
start in on
sound.
setups with
I
more
know what that
speakers,
means.
such as 6 channels. It's now to the point where some of the PlayStation 5 games in development are
Oh, it's
extensively
self-explanatory.
using this system. One of the
that
games
one I
allows
get.
you
All
to
right, you got that
toggle
one.
Yeah,
between
but if you call it
conventional PlayStation 4
VSS
style
fucking
stereo audio
852 or
and
some
RU
shit, then I'd be like, I don't know what the
3D
fuck that means.
I listened with just
Hey,
an
he's not gonna
ordinary
explain
pair of
'cause he's a
over-the-air
fucker.
headphones
You
and
say
headphones. 3D audio has that dimensional feel to it. Conventional stereo audio feels
Dude, if you got your head out of your ass for 2 fucking seconds,
The
stop
improvement
bitching.
is
It's
I
not-
can't. It's more comfortable with
So,
my
a
ass.
big advantage, but have I entered the matrix? Does my brain believe?
Oh, yeah,
He's not
the
gonna
Matrix
explain
again.
it to the fucking ass.
Yo, this guy entered the Matrix again.
Well, the answer is no. But you've probably caught on to what's missing.
I
here,
feel like
namely
Gors having some
whose
PTSD with some
HRTF
college
is being
professors
used.
that
Look
just
at
talk
this
to
shit.
him like you knew everything.
You look at this and go, oh, this is interesting. Is it two colored blobs?
Game playing audio.
Yeah, it's
This shows us
Sound
the
reception.
default HRTF
What a
on the left.
fucking loser
In my
finds this
HRTF on the
entertaining.
right, you can see that
Oh,
the
wow. It
features
looks like a
are the
Rorschach
same,
thing.
but the
What the fuck?
details
What
are
do you
quite
see?
different.
Oh, both of them look
With the
like fucking
default
parasites
HRTF,
to me.
As I said, the 3D audio sounds pretty great. When I use my
Oh,
HRTF,
I'm
though,
going
the audio
insane.
reaches a higher
I'm fucking
level
went
of
insane,
realism,
bro.
which is to say that when using headphones and my HRTF, I occasionally get fooled and even think a sound is coming from the real world when it's actually coming from the game.
Just watching some PS5
A
stuff with
corollary
the
to this
bros.
is that there are a few people whose
Is
HRTFs
that
are
what this is?
sufficiently far from the default HRTF, that's the
Oh, there's
red
Cerny.
dot
I
here,
see him.
that they can toggle between PS4
There he is.
style
He's
and
that blue
PS5
dot.
style audio and
It's
not
all the white
sense
dots.
much difference.
Orion's
I've
belt.
had a few people describe the PlayStation 5's 3D
Cerny
audio as sounding
considering
like
himself a star?
bit better stereo audio. Presumably, they're the ones
wish
at
he
the
was
very
shot in outer
edges
space
of
right
this
now.
diagram. Which means what HRTF you're using is key. I'd like everyone to be able to experience what I'm experiencing,
Like
but
everybody to
obviously
leave.
it's not possible to measure the HRTF of every PlayStation
There's-
user.
How many
That
people are
means
watching him
HRTF
refresh?
Selection
It's like
and synthesis
Quan
are going to be
Chi's just
big
sucking my
topics
soul
going
out.
forward as the Tempest technology matures. At PlayStation 5 launch, we'll be offering a choice of 5 HRTFs.
There's still
There's a-
600,000 people
a simple
watching. Everyone's
test where
pretty
you
bored
pick
right
the
now.
one that gives you the best locality.
There was 700,000
That's just
people
the
at one
first
point,
step,
just letting
though.
you
This
know.
is an open-ended research topic. Maybe you'll be sending us a photo of your ear, and we'll choose a neural
an ear.
network to pick the
Oh, my ears now.
closest. Maybe you'll be sending us a video of your ears and your
Oh,
head.
videos
and we'll make
of your
a
ears.
3D model of them and synthesize the HRTF. Maybe you'll play an audio game to tune your
maybe you'll
HRTF.
play
We'll be
Gors just
subtly
the-
changing it as you play, and home
Gors
in
just a
on
man
the
of the people,
HRTF
you
that
know?
gives you the highest score, meaning that it
Gors a
matches
man of
you
fucking
the best.
ignorance. He needs to shut the fuck
This
up.
is a
and his
journey
own-
we'll all be taking together
You're-
over the next
you're
few
so
years.
sad.
Ultimately, we're committing to enabling everyone
depressing.
to experience that next level of realism.
Oh.
Hopefully, I've been able to illustrate
Oh,
a
thank
bit
God
about
he's
our
wrapping it
design
the
and
fuck
decision-making
up.
process today, and why PlayStation 5 has the feature
Unless
set
it's an
that it
hour and
does.
52 minutes.
Now comes the fun part. We get to see how the development community takes advantage of that feature set. I'm hoping for the completely unexpected. Will it come from audio, ray tracing, the capabilities of
Oh,
the
cool.
SSD, or something else?
Oh, we didn't even get
I
to see
guess
them
we'll
leave.
find
We
out
can't
soon.
verify they're real people.
Thank you for your time today.
Gore's pissed. That's why he's not talking.
Jesus Christ. What a nightmare.
Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Thank you for coming to our boring as fuck TED Talk.
That was kind of interesting. Shut up.
TED Talks are interesting. That's not interesting. That's
That was interesting. That was kind
Oh,
of
yeah,
cool.
look, you
to
can say, oh,
break
here's a color blob of an ear or some shit. Like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, what? HFRTA, what?
that. You'd understand it if you listened.
I don't want to understand it. What the fuck? I will fight to understand it. To not understand it. Tired. Fuck it, I'm even more tired now. That didn't wake me up. I'd rather watch 5 more Indie Worlds.
Or shut up and go eat your next egg.
I don't even know what the fuck you just said, but all right.
Your next egg.
Oh, my egg. Yeah, right. I already forgot about that bit. Well, that was a nightmare.
Well, that was fun. I liked it.
David, I agree with you.
It's fun. It was fun. That was fun. That was so much fun.
David, shouted out.
Being
Jack
bored
too.
as fuck was so much fun. Wow. If you like that, go to hell.